All right, so let's do the Priest songs, right?
Yeah.
Metal six pack.
Yeah, in honor of KK coming on, we're doing our metal six pack our personal top favorite 6 Priest songs. I'm going to tell you, I was this all came down kind of late, so I turned my list in like really off the top of my head. But I thought maybe okay, there's so many great Priest songs. If I got to narrow it to 6, maybe the first 6 that come to me will be the way to do it. So who starts? Don?
I'll start.
All right, go ahead.
My
Jim.
number 6 is Running Wild, a track off the Hellbent for Leather or Killing Machine record, also on
That's
Unleash
the band
East.
Running Wild.
Oh, Jesus. Are you kidding me?
Joe, you're fired.
Oh, yeah, it
That's
is.
a band called Running Wild. I was like, that looks like it could be Priest, but that
I
ain't
know.
Priest.
I just looked quickly. I saw blonde hair. I'm like, oh, that must be KK. And then I was just talking. Yeah, that is.
KK filled out.
Yeah, a little bit.
Wow, that's a band called Running Wild. There's always something.
And at 1980, I mean, it got released in 79 on Hellbent for Leather, so it's close to the 8.
No, it says 89.
Oh,
It says
89,
89.
okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Running Wild is my number 6.
Not the song, not the band.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
Okay, my number 6. And I was the same way. Like I just my list came together pretty quickly. I mean, I think there was maybe nine originally that came off the top of my head, and I whittled it to 6, so it wasn't too bad. The 6th slot was the toughest. I had Beyond the Realms of Death in there originally, but I ended up I had Delivering the Goods in there originally, but it ended up being Tyrant, particularly the Unleashed in the East version of that song. So that's my number 6.
All right. Yeah, I just riffed off this like in 5 seconds. So my number 6 is the title song to the album we just talked about, KK, about it, Painkiller. I mean, such a huge statement for Priest to come out with something that heavy, that relentless. Remember, they're coming off Turbo, they're coming off Ram It Down, they're coming off what weren't great records and really needed to reestablish being a metal band again. First album was Scott Travis, that opening drum part and double kick. Halford's vocals just ridiculous. I mean, it's Priest almost kind of delving into what was happening then in metal. You know, the heavier, the more extreme, the faster. I mean, Priest is one of the inventors of metal, but this is them sort of, I think, taking a little influence from what was going on around them and doing their version of it. So the title track, Painkiller, at 6.
My number 5 is the opening track off of British Steel, Rapid Fire. Way to start a record, so heavy. My favorite Priest record. I wanted to ask KK about some stuff on here, but we didn't get to it. But Rapid Fire, just fucking phenomenal at number 5.
Yeah, I had that one in the top 9 also, but didn't make it for me. My number 5 is, Genocide. I mean, that 1-2 punch of Genocide into Tyrant off Unleashed in the East, like that's just seared. Those 2 songs back to back are just seared in my mind from that album. You know, the studio versions of both of those songs are not great because that was what production was back then. But the live versions of both these songs are just, off the charts great. So that's my number 5, Genocide.
All right. My number 5 is an album track from Screaming for Vengeance, which you could have gone in a million directions on Screaming for Vengeance. Maybe my favorite Priest album. I could have went with anything. Electric Eye, Riding on the Wind,
Devil's Child,
the title track, but I love Bloodstone, and I could have done all 6 from this record, but I just, again, off the top of my head, I went with Bloodstone, and that's my 5.
My number 4 is off the Scream for Vengeance record, Riding on the Wind. Yeah, unbelievable.
One, yeah.
That's the band Riding on the Wind.
No, I mean, yeah, anything. We'll get to Scream for Vengeance later, but yeah, phenomenal song, Riding on the Wind.
Yeah, that's a great one, man. My number 4 is The Sinner. We have KK on, who's obviously most connected in fans' minds to this song because of that solo in the middle of the tune that, yes, he always heavily improvised when they played it live. So again, the live version of this is just outrageous. Rob's vocals, everything right on point. And I always like when they wrote songs about these mythical characters. So The Sinner is number 4 for me.
All right.
Go ahead, Ed.
Well, I'm waiting for it to come up so I can remember what it is.
It might be Sinner.
It
It
is.
might be.
Oh,
It
okay.
is.
It's Sinner. Well, I knew
Yeah.
it was on my list too. I thought it was I didn't remember where I put it. So I'm with Don. Sinner is an all-time Priest classic. For me, the Unleashed in the East version is the definitive version.
Mhm.
And yes, a big showcase for KK. All that whammy bar stuff that he does, that's like a huge, huge KK moment in the classic Priest shows. And yeah, you just think of on Unleashed in the East, Halford going, the Sinner, just the best. So I love that one. Total epic classic at number 4.
My number 3 is the same song. So that's great that we just leave that up there. Yeah. Especially the live version of this.
You
Unleashed
sure
in
it's
the
not
East
the
version.
band Sinner?
There is one.
There is one.
There is a band. That's right. There is. No, yeah. So what can you say about it? You guys already said everything about it. So that's my number 3.
Yep. My number 3 is Free Wheel Burning'. My God, what a way to open an album. That song is just, the vocal in that on that track is just insane. I probably my favorite opening track on any Priest album, maybe other than my number 1, which we'll get to, but that's number 3 for me, Free Will Burning.
Yeah, so your number 1 is Turbo Lover then, I guess.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
All right.
Ed,
Whose is this? Me?
Yeah.
who, me
So my
or me?
I think it's me, Beetlejuice. Who, me? Beyond the Realms of Death. Obviously, again, beyond epic. I remember, I think it was Tony Iommi telling me that the secret to heaviness is to put lighter stuff in there so that when the heavy kicks in, it makes it feel all the heavier. And this song does exactly that. I mean, you listen to this song, you think it's a ballad. You're like, oh, that's a Priest ballad or whatever. And then it just, it is just that visual, which of those two banging out those riffs, man, so great. So Beyond the Realms of Death, which was in the Priest show, out of the Priest show. Sometimes they put it back in. To me, it's one of those ones that should never not be in the Priest show. That's my number 3.
My number 2 is going back to the British Steel record, Metal Gods. Phenomenal. I mean, the riff in this, and then Halford with the whip. I still do that when it comes. Why? I'm a child. I'm a grown man.
You know what that actually is?
I'm going with, what is that? It's not a whip?
Well, you know at the end where it sounds like there's a marching, like,
Yeah.
you know what that is?
No.
It's silverware.
Silverware. It's they recorded that at John Lennon's house studio, and they went in the kitchen and they got like a tray that held like the metal forks and knives, and they just shook it in front of the microphone.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. But you could still do the whip motion if you want, Jim.
Yeah.
Well, the whip might be a whip. Knowing
Yeah.
Rob, it might have been a whip.
Probably.
I'm talking about the end during the marching.
Yeah. All right, my number 2 is the Sentinel, also off of Defenders of the Faith. That note he hits at the end, the hair on my arms, my ears, my back, and my nose, it all stands up on end when he's just screaming, born to avenge, condemned to hell. Like that end part is just so intense. So that's my number 2, the Sentinel.
All right. My number 2 is Metal Gods from British Steel. I'm with Jim. That riff is as classic as riffs get. Anytime they kick into that song, it's like the Priest show is on. It's just, it's almost like, obviously feel like it's kind of like autobiographical, Priest being the Metal Gods or whatever, but it's all about that riff. That riff is just, even just like, the chorus and then dun, 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 dun. It's so Priest. It's so metal. Metal Gods, my number 2 Priest song.
Remember we hosted the 30th anniversary.
Oh, how
Brutus
could I
Steel
ever forget?
Down in Florida at the Hard Rock.
Yeah, I think it was at 30 or 25 where they played.
I think it was 2010, so it was 30.
No, it was before we had that metal show because
It was?
yes, because I remember their manager called me, asked me if I would go out and say something. You guys were there just to hang out and join me. And I remember telling her, hey, I got 2 friends with me. We're going to start doing a TV show together. I'd like to bring them out. We had not started TMS yet. So it would have been 07-ish around then.
Well, needless to say, we were never asked to do that again.
Why?
I don't know. Somebody threw something in the introduction about Florida girls like to take it in the ass. So
I lived down in Fort Lauderdale. It was me.
It wasn't me.
I was just getting the crowd pumped. I lived down there in Hollywood, Fort Lauderdale. I know.
Yeah, I didn't say you were wrong. I'm just saying.
Look. That's where I cut my teeth with anal. Is down in Fort Lauderdale. So I had to bring it up. I'm just saying.
I just wish somebody had a camera on Don and I's face when Jim said that in front of 10,000 people.
And Mike Piazza was there that time too with us.
Yeah.
I know the band. I know the manager. I know the people that run the venue. Hey, you got to bring these guys up. Let them come up with me. It's going to be great. And then Jim lets that go. And I'm like, holy shit.
And that was a special night for them because they shot the DVD that night. That's when they filmed the whole thing.
And you remember it was dark the whole time because they didn't have the lighting right. They had a lighting glitch. And the lights came down, but they never went on. There was like a lighting problem. The whole first 2 songs they played in the dark. And then when they put it out on DVD, they somehow lightened it up. But I remember there was a technical issue. And then remember we went in the back after we did it and the bike was there, the motorcycle. We were looking at the motorcycle.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was cool. That was
Where did we leave off here?
Okay, so my number 1 is going to be Victim of Changes, especially the live version. And even when you go see them in concert and waiting for Halford to hit that note and the place goes nuts. It's just phenomenal. The studio version is great too, but the live version of Victim of Changes. That's my
I don't
know
how I left that song off my list, but I got to go. The number 1 Priest song, Painkiller. It's just, for people who saw earlier the interview with KK, he really summed it up. I mean, it's so over the top, heavy. And when Priest ends with this song, there's just devastation all over the land. I mean, that song is so freaking heavy. There's no way to follow that song. You can't play Painkiller and then play Before the Dawn right after. I mean, that's it. Show's over, folks. You saw Painkiller, go home now. So that's my number 1.
How on earth can you not have the definitive Judas Priest song of all time on your list? Which we all know Jim was correct, and I will be correct.
Nostradamus?
Victim of Changes. The definitive Priest song ever created. The landmark Priest song. And yes, the Unleashed in the East version would be the version I defer to. Even though the studio version, which you rarely hear, is pretty cool. Victim of Changes is the all-time definitive Priest song. And speaking of that big note that Rob hits, I once asked him about that. I was like, it's got to kill you to know that you got to do that every night. Everyone's waiting for it. And he once told me, and this blew my mind, he said it's actually harder for him. The soft part in the song? He goes, changes come over your body. That part. He said that's actually harder for him to sing than going after that note, that big note. So that's an interesting thing from a vocal perspective. But Victim of Changes, that was the instant, immediately when we were doing this, I'm like, well, there's the number 1. Now what do I do for the other 5? So there you go. That's the right answer.
No, right. But anyway, that's that. You're fired. Yes, I'm fired this week.
Hey, thanks for watching that clip. If you liked it, here are a few more you might like. And if you want to support the show, consider hitting the join button and becoming a channel member to unlock exclusive bonus content.